The quantum sensors screamed their warning across the bridge of the Vindictive's end, but Captain Aaron Voss barely flinched. She'd been expecting this moment for 3 years, ever since the coalition forces had systematically hunted down and destroyed every other vessel in humanity's fleet. Her scarred hands moved across the command console with practiced efficiency, silencing the alarms that announced the approach of 17 alien warships. "Ma'am, it's the Hegemony's 4th Fleet," reported Lieutenant Kareem Ulloa, his voice tight, with barely controlled fear. "Flagship Dominion's Pride leading the formation. They've got us bracketed on all vectors." Voss allowed herself a cold smile. The Hegemony had sent their best Admiral Kelter's own battle group. They weren't taking any chances with humanity's last remaining vessel, even though conventional wisdom suggested the Vindictive's end was nothing more than an obsolete heavy cruiser limping through space on failing drives. How wrong they were. "Signal." "The engine room," Voss commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years' worth of preparation. "Tell Engineer Malik to begin the awakening sequence." Deep in the ship's bowels, Chief Engineer Raisin Malik's team worked frantically among machinery that defied every known law of physics. The Hegemony had crushed humanity's colonies one by one, believing they'd eliminated the threat of human expansion. But they'd never discovered the secret that lay dormant within this single surviving ship, a secret that had cost humanity everything to develop. The bridge viewscreen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Kelter's reptilian features. His 4 eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction as he spoke in the clicking, hissing language of the Velthani. The universal translator rendered his words in flat monotone. "Captain Voss, your species' final hour has arrived. Surrender now, and we will grant you the mercy of a swift death." Voss leaned back in her command chair, studying the alien's confident expression. "Admiral, I have a counter-proposal. Turn your ships around and flee this system immediately. Consider it a professional courtesy from one military officer to another." Kaltar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Your bravado is amusing, human. 1 ship against 17. Your mathematics are clearly as primitive as your technology." Mathematics. Voss tasted the word like vintage. "Wine. Tell me, Admiral, how many human colonies has the Hegemony destroyed in the past decade?" 47, Kelter replied without hesitation, pride evident in his tone. "And how many human vessels have your forces eliminated?" 2,000. 312 confirmed kills. "Yours will make it an even number," Voss nodded slowly. "Impressive record. But there's something you should know about humans, Admiral. We're remarkably good at learning from our mistakes. And we've had 3 years to study the wreckage of every ship you've destroyed, every colony you've burned, every strategic mistake we've made." The alien's confidence wavered slightly. Something in the human captain's tone suggested knowledge he didn't possess. "You want to know why this ship survived when all others perished?" Voss continued. "It wasn't luck, Admiral. It wasn't superior firepower or better tactics. We survived because we were never meant to fight conventional battles. This vessel was designed for one specific purpose, to ensure that if humanity fell, we wouldn't fall alone." On the tactical display, the Hegemony ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging with lethal energy. But in the depths of the Vindictive's end, ancient mechanisms stirred to life. The ship's true nature began to reveal itself as hull plates shifted and reconfigured, exposing systems that had remained hidden for years. Malik's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, the Omega Protocol is online. All systems show green. We're ready for activation on your command." Voss could see the confusion spreading across Kelter's features as his sensors detected the strange energy readings emanating from her ship. Too late. The Admiral was beginning to understand that this wasn't going to be the routine execution he'd anticipated. "Last chance, Admiral," Voss said quietly. "Order your fleet to withdraw." But even as she spoke, She knew the aliens' pride would never allow retreat. The hegemony had never faced a defeated enemy who still possessed the capability to strike back. They were about to learn why, throughout human history, the most dangerous opponent had always been the one with nothing left to lose. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as two civilizations prepared for a confrontation that would determine the fate of countless worlds. Admiral Kelter's response came in the form of plasma cannon fire. 17 hegemony warships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to vaporize a small moon. But as the brilliant energy beams struck the Vindictive's end, something impossible happened. The weapons simply vanished, absorbed into the ship's hull like water into sand. "Impossible," Kelter hissed, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "No. Known technology can absorb that level of directed energy." On the human bridge, Voss watched her enemy's confusion with grim satisfaction. "You're right, Admiral. No known technology. But you made one crucial error in your campaign against humanity. You left us alone long enough to get creative." The Vindictive's end began to change. What had appeared to be a standard heavy cruiser revealed its true form as the outer hull peeled away like shedding skin. Beneath lay something that had never existed in any alien database, a ship built not from metal and ceramics, but from living tissue and bone. Organic conduits pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as the vessel's true nature emerged. "Biosynthetic warfare platform," whispered Science Officer Naya Redwood, monitoring the readings with awe despite having helped design the systems. 3 years of genetic engineering, bioweapon research, and xenobiology analysis. Every sample of alien tissue we could recover from destroyed colonies, all of it integrated into a single living weapon. The hegemony fleet recoiled as tendrils of organic matter began extending from the human ship. These weren't simple appendages, they were hunting organs, each one equipped with sensory arrays that could detect the unique electromagnetic signatures of alien life forms across impossible distances. Kelter screamed orders to his fleet. "All ships, maximum range, launch antimatter torpedoes." The first wave of missiles streaked toward the Vindictive's end, but the bioship's response was swift and terrifying. Defensive organs erupted from its surface, releasing clouds of what looked like spores into space. When the antimatter warheads detonated, the explosions were immediately contained and absorbed by the living material, their destructive energy converted into raw biological fuel. "Admiral," Lieutenant Ulloa reported, his voice filled with dark anticipation. "The hunting tendrils have acquired target lock on all enemy vessels. They're detecting Velfani, Zephyrin, and Crixtal life signs." "Fire!" "The Lazarus swarm," Voss commanded. From the bioship's forward sections, hundreds of pod-like organisms launched into space. Each pod was barely larger than a human fist, but within their organic shells lay the culmination of humanity's most desperate research: weaponized viruses, specifically engineered to target alien physiology. The first pod struck the hegemony, destroyer Talon's Edge. The organic missile burned through the ship's hull like acid, releasing its payload into the vessel's atmosphere. Within minutes, the Velfani crew began experiencing what their medical systems couldn't identify: cascade failure of their respiratory system combined with rapid cellular breakdown. "The spores are adapting," reported Medical Officer Dr. Yuki Sato from the bioship's integration chamber, where she monitored the weapon's effectiveness through direct neural interface. "Alien immune systems are attempting to fight back, but the viruses are evolving in real time. Estimated crew mortality rate, 97% within 15 minutes. Across the hegemony formation, 3 more ships suffered direct hits from the Lazarus pods. The aliens' communication channels filled with panic as crews reported symptoms their medics had never encountered. This wasn't simply biological warfare, it was evolution weaponized, turning the aliens' own cellular structure against them. But Kelter was no fool. All ships, emergency atmospheric purge. Seal all compartments and switch to emergency life support. Target the source, destroy that abomination before it can launch another wave. The remaining 13 ships concentrated their fire on the Vindictives. But the bioship had already adapted to their energy signatures. Its surface rippled and shifted, developing specialized organs that could not only absorb the incoming fire, but analyze its quantum structure. Within moments, the ship began generating its own version of the aliens' weapons, but with improvements. Returning fire, announced weapons specialist Marcus Volkov, his hands dancing across controls that were part machinery, part living neural interface. Biomimetic plasma cannons charged and ready. The Vindictive's end struck back with weapons that perfectly mimicked hegemony technology, but enhanced through biological optimization. The resulting beams were 30% more efficient and twice as powerful as anything in the alien fleet. The heavy cruiser Sovereign's might took a direct hit to its command section, her bridge erupting in a fountain of sparks and depressurized atmosphere. "Impossible," Kelter roared. "How are they replicating our weapon systems?" Voss's smile was predatory. "Every piece of debris from every ship you've destroyed, Admiral. Every scrap of alien technology our automated probes could recover. We've been studying you for 3 years, learning how you think, how you fight, how you die." The bioship pulsed with new growth as it processed the incoming damage and the wreckage from the destroyed alien vessels. It was learning, adapting, becoming stronger with each exchange of fire. What had begun as a 17-to-1 odds mismatch was rapidly becoming something far more balanced and far more terrifying than anything the hegemony had anticipated. In the depths of space, humanity's last ship prepared to show its enemies exactly why a species driven to the edge of extinction was the most dangerous opponent in the galaxy. The Vindictive's end began to hunt. What had started as a conventional space battle devolved into something from the aliens' deepest nightmares as the bioship deployed its full arsenal of biological horrors. Serpentine appendages, each as large as a frigate, lashed out across impossible distances to ensnare fleeing hegemony vessels. The tentacles didn't simply hold their prey, they began to feed. "Hull breach on the razor's edge," screamed the Crixtal communications officer, his insectoid voice distorted by panic. "Something's eating through our armor plating. The metal is ... It's dissolving." Captain Voss watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction as her ship's digestive organs consumed 2 enemy destroyers simultaneously. The bioship's ability to break down any material at the molecular level had been tested extensively on captured hegemony technology, but seeing it in action against living targets was poetry in motion. "Admiral Kelter is attempting to coordinate a retreat," reported Lieutenant Ulloa, monitoring enemy communications. "Their formation is breaking apart." "Let them run," Voss replied. "But make sure they understand what they're running from." The Vindictive's end released its second wave of biological weapons, hunter-seeker organisms that could survive in the vacuum of space and track enemy vessels across light years. Unlike the Lazarus pods, these creatures were designed for psychological warfare. They would attach themselves to fleeing ships and slowly consume the hull while transmitting the crew's death screams across all emergency frequencies. Admiral Heltor's flagship, the Dominion's pride, had managed to maintain some semblance of order among the chaos. His tactical officer, a seasoned Zephyrin named Crixtal, reported grimly, "Admiral, we've lost 6 ships completely. 3 more are reporting containment failures. The biological agents are spreading despite all countermeasures." "How is this possible?" Kelter demanded, his reptilian features twisted with disbelief. "Our intelligence indicated the humans possessed no bioweapon technology." "Because we never showed it to you." Voss's voice cut through their communications, her signal somehow penetrating their most secure channels. "Every diplomatic encounter, every first contact scenario, every treaty negotiation, we kept our true capabilities hidden. You thought you were fighting soldiers and colonists. You never realized you were fighting scientists. The truth was more horrifying than the Admiral could have imagined. Humanity hadn't simply developed biological weapons, they'd turned their entire species into a research laboratory. Every human colony that fell had volunteered their population for experimentation, uploading their consciousness into quantum storage matrices, while their bodies were subjected to alien pathogens. Each death had provided data, each failure had been analyzed, and each success had been incorporated into the Vindictive's end. Dr. Sato's voice echoed across the bridge, neural integration complete. We now have full tactical data on hegemony. Fleet movements, weapon specifications, and crew psychological profiles. The bioship is ready for Phase 3 deployment. What's Phase 3? Ulloa asked, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Voss's expression hardened. We show them what humanity learned from studying their own biology. The Vindictive's end began to change again, its surface erupting with new growths that pulsed with alien bioluminescence. These weren't human organs. They were perfect recreations of Velthani, Zephyrin, and Crixtel biological systems, weaponized and improved through genetic engineering. Launching Doppelganger Swarm, announced Volkov, from the bioships expanded. Hundreds of organisms that looked disturbingly like crew members from the Hegemony fleet detached and flew toward enemy vessels. But these weren't simple mimics. They were perfect biological replicas, enhanced with human technology, capable of bypassing every security system the aliens possessed. The first wave reached the heavy cruiser Stellar Dominion. The creatures attached themselves to the ship's docking bays and began secreting enzymes that dissolved the access codes directly from the ship's computer systems. Within minutes they were inside, infiltrating the vessel while wearing the faces of the crew's own comrades. Emergency! Emergency! The distress call from Stellar Dominion was broadcast in perfect Velthani. We have intruders on all decks. They look exactly like us, but they're killing everyone. The psychological impact was devastating. Hegemony crews found themselves unable to trust their own shipmates, creating paranoia and chaos that spread through the fleet like wildfire. Some ships began firing on their own crew members, while others sealed themselves into emergency compartments and waited for death. But the worst was yet to come. The bioship had spent 3 years analyzing not just alien technology, but alien culture and psychology. It knew exactly which fears to exploit, which instincts to trigger, and which memories to corrupt. Deploying memory weavers, Voss announced. Most insidious weapons in humanity's arsenal were microscopic organisms that could interface directly with alien nervous systems. They didn't kill, they rewrote memories, implanting false experiences that turned allies against each other and commanders against their own judgment. Admiral Kelter watched in horror as his own tactical officer suddenly drew a sidearm and shot the communications specialist, screaming about imaginary betrayals that felt more real than his actual memories. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out as the memory weavers turned the aliens' own minds into weapons against them. All remaining ships, Kelter broadcast desperately. Initiate emergency jump protocols. Retreat to the Hegemony core worlds. But as the surviving vessels powered up their faster-than-light drives, they discovered that the Vindictive's end had one final surprise waiting for them. The bioship had been releasing nearly invisible spores throughout the entire battle spores that had attached themselves to every enemy vessel and were now interfacing with their navigation systems. Instead of jumping to safety, the fleeing ships found themselves transported directly into the heart of the stellar nursery, where newborn stars and gravitational anomalies made escape impossible. They were trapped, alone with their fears and each other, while humanity's last ship prepared to deliver the final blow. The hunt was about to become a slaughter dot in the stellar nursery's crimson hellscape. where young protostars burned like demonic eyes. The Vindictive's end revealed its ultimate purpose. The bioship had never been designed merely to fight. It was a harvesting vessel, built to extract everything useful from defeated enemies and add their capabilities to its own ever-growing arsenal. Beginning extraction protocols, Dr. Sato reported from her neural interface chamber, her consciousness partially merged with the ship's biological systems. Target priority, the flagship's command crew. We need their strategic databases intact. Admiral Keltor's Dominion's pride found itself snared by organic cables that had materialized from the surrounding debris field. But these weren't simple restraints. They were neural connectors, designed to interface directly with the ship's computer systems and extract every piece of data they contained. Security breach in the main computer core. The Zephyrin tactical officers screamed as alien organisms began infiltrating their most secure systems. They're downloading our entire military database. The extraction process was surgical in its precision and horrifying in its execution. The bioship didn't simply copy alien data, it absorbed the knowledge into its own living memory banks, where human consciousness could analyze and improve upon enemy strategies in real time. Every tactical manual, every fleet deployment pattern, every secret weapon design became part of humanity's growing arsenal. But knowledge wasn't the only thing being harvested. Hull breach on Deck 7. Came the panicked report from throughout the trapped hegemony fleet. Something's coming through the walls. The Vindictive's end had deployed its assimilation drones, creatures that looked disturbingly human but possessed the ability to perfectly mimic any alien physiology. They moved through enemy ships like ghosts made flesh, capturing key personnel for a fate worse than death. Chief Engineer Malik monitored the process from his bio-integration chamber, his voice grim as he reported to the bridge. Neural extraction proceeding on schedule, Captain. We're pulling command codes, tactical experiences, and personal memories from captured officers. The ship's knowledge base is expanding exponentially. The horror of humanity's approach became clear as captured aliens found themselves connected to the bioship's nervous system, their minds stripped of useful information while their bodies were analyzed for biological advantages. The Crystal's natural armor plating, the Zephyrin's enhanced reflexes, the Velthani's electromagnetic sensitivity, all of it was cataloged, replicated, and improved upon. This is monstrous, Admiral Keltor whispered as he watched his officers disappear one by one into the organic depths of the human vessel. You've become something worse than any plague we've ever encountered. Captain Voss's image appeared on his view screen, but she was no longer entirely human. The bioship's integration process had enhanced her as well, granting her access to the collective knowledge and abilities of every species humanity had encountered. Her eyes held the depth of a being who could think in 11 different cognitive patterns simultaneously. Monstrous? Voss replied, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple alien vocal cords. We learned from the best teachers, Admiral. Every atrocity your hegemony committed against our colonies, every civilian population you exterminated, every cultural artifact you destroyed, it all contributed to our education. The remaining hegemony ships attempted a desperate counterattack, but their weapons were useless against an enemy that had already analyzed and surpassed their technology. Worse, the Vindictive's end began deploying weaponized versions of their own crew members, perfect biological replicas enhanced with human improvements and commanded by AI systems that had absorbed the tactical knowledge of a dozen species. The destroyer Final Vengeance found itself under attack by creatures that looked exactly like its own crew, but moved within human coordination and possessed weapons that improved upon Velthani designs. The ship's captain, a veteran of 30 battles, could only watch in horror as his own tactical strategies were used against him with ruthless efficiency. How many more ships are you going to sacrifice to your pride, Admiral? Voss asked as another hegemony vessel succumbed to the bioship's assault. Your crews are dying so that we can learn from their memories. Every death makes us stronger. But the true horror was still to come. Deep within the Vindictive's end, the consciousness of every human who had died in the hegemony's campaign of extermination was stored in quantum memory matrices. They weren't gone, they were passengers, witnesses to humanity's revenge and participants in the biological integration process. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Ulloa, his own form showing signs of bioenhancement as tendrils of living metal had replaced his damaged arm. "The ship is requesting permission to begin reproductive protocols. It wants to spawn daughter vessels using the captured alien genetic material." The implications were staggering. The Vindictive's end hadn't been built to win a single battle. It was designed to become the seed of a new kind of warfare, one where biological weapons could reproduce and spread across the galaxy like a plague of vengeance. Admiral Kelter's remaining ships, now numbering only 4, huddled together in the stellar nursery's chaotic gravity well, their crews paralyzed by the realization that they weren't fighting a ship at all. They were facing the evolutionary response of an entire species that had been pushed beyond its breaking point. "I'm prepared to make you an offer, Admiral," Voss said, her bio-enhanced form visible through the organic walls of her ship. "Surrender now, submit to neural integration, and your species might survive what's coming. Refuse, and we'll hunt down every hegemony world with fleets of bioships, each one carrying the memories and hatred of every human you've killed." In the hellish light of newborn stars, the true scope of humanity's revenge began to unfold. The Vindictive's end wasn't just humanity's last ship, it was the prototype for an entirely new form of warfare, one that would make the hegemony's campaign of extermination look like a mercy killing. The choice was surrender or extinction, and time was running out for Admiral Keltar to make the only decision that might save his species from the monster they had created. Admiral Keltar's answer came in the form of a synchronized suicide charge. The 4 remaining hegemony ships, Dominion's Pride, Eternal Wrath, Stellar Fist, and Void Hunter, activated their emergency overload protocols and hurled themselves directly at the Vindictive's end with the fury of a dying civilization. "All ships ramming speed," Kelter roared across the command channel. "If we cannot defeat this abomination, we'll deny it the satisfaction of harvesting our knowledge." The bioship's response was swift and merciless. Organic defense systems erupted from its hull like a blooming flower of death, each petal a weapon system that had been perfected through the analysis of captured alien technology. But the hegemony crews were beyond fear now. They fought with the desperate courage of beings who knew they were already dead. The Eternal Wrath struck first, her heavy plasma cannons tearing into the bioship's outer membranes. For the first time in the battle, the Vindictive's end bled not oil or coolant, but actual blood that crystallized instantly in the vacuum of space. The alien ship's sacrifice had wounded humanity's monster, proving it could be hurt. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, reported Engineer Malek. His voice strained as he felt the ship's pain through his neural connection. "The bioarmor is regenerating, but we've lost approximately 30% of our forward assault organs." Captain Voss felt every wound as if it were her own flesh being torn. The bio-integration process had made her one with the ship, sharing its agony and its rage. "Deploy the retribution swarm," she commanded through gritted teeth. "Show them what happens when they draw human blood." From the wounded sections of the bioship, a cloud of microscopic organisms erupted into space, each one a tiny guided missile, programmed with the genetic signatures of every alien species that had participated in humanity's destruction. The swarm engulfed the Eternal Wrath like a silver fog, and within seconds the ship's hull began to dissolve as the organisms consumed everything that wasn't human. The crew of the Eternal Wrath had perhaps 30 seconds to contemplate their fate before the ship's life support systems failed. Their death screams were broadcast across all frequencies as a warning to the other vessels. But the surviving hegemony ships pressed their attack with suicidal determination. Stellar Fist came in low, her captain attempting to target the bioships' apparent weak points with surgical precision. But the Vindictive's end had been learning throughout the battle, and what appeared to be vulnerable sections were actually trap organs designed to lure enemies into optimal firing positions. Launching Devouropods, announced weapons specialist Volkov as the hegemony cruiser passed through the bioship's killing field. The pods weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were mobile stomachs capable of engulfing enemy vessels and beginning the digestion process while the crew was still alive. The Stellar Fist found itself wrapped in organic walls that began secreting acids, powerful enough to dissolve quantum-hardened armor plating. But the alien crew fought back with everything they had. Emergency power was rerouted to the ship's main cannon, which fired point-blank into the stomach walls surrounding them. The explosion tore through both vessels, sending chunks of metal and flesh spinning into the stellar nursery's chaotic gravity well. "Massive damage to our port digestive array," Dr. Sato reported, her voice tight with pain. "We're losing biomass faster than we can regenerate. The ship is ... It's screaming, Captain." The Vindictive's end was indeed screaming, a subsonic wail that transmitted through space via quantum fluctuations, audible to any species with sufficiently sensitive hearing. It was the sound of every human who had ever died at alien hands, given voice through biological amplification systems that turned grief into a weapon. The Void. Hunter used the bioship's distress to her advantage, launching a spread of antimatter torpedoes at point-blank range. The explosions tore through the Vindictive's end's secondary hull, exposing delicate internal organs to the vacuum of space. But instead of dying, the bioship began to adapt, sealing off damaged sections and rerouting vital functions through backup biological pathways. "They're learning to fight us," Admiral Kelter observed with grim admiration as his flagship closed for the final assault. "Each attack makes them stronger." "That's the point," Captain Voss replied, her voice now a harmony of human and alien vocal patterns, as the bioship incorporated captured physiology into her own form. "We've become evolution weaponized. Every wound teaches us. Every death feeds us. Every victory makes us more than we were." The Dominion's pride launched everything she had: plasma cannons, particle beams, gravitational torpedoes, and experimental quantum disruptors. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon, and it struck the bioship's core sections with devastating effect. Entire organ systems were vaporized, biological conduits severed, and for a moment it seemed as though the aliens might achieve their suicidal goal. But humanity had planned for this moment. Deep within the Vindictive's end, emergency protocols activated systems that had never been tested in combat. The ship began to consume itself, breaking down damaged tissue and recycling it into new weapons and defenses. What had been wounded became weaponized, and what had been destroyed became the raw material for revenge. "Phoenix Protocol activated," Engineer Malik announced as the bioship's true nature revealed itself. "We're not just a weapon, Admiral. We're a resurrection engine. Every human who died in your campaign is about to be reborn as an instrument of vengeance." The Vindictive's end erupted in new growth, its mass doubling in seconds as it converted the wreckage of destroyed hegemony ships into additional biomass. The stellar nursery itself became a resource, as the bioship began harvesting energy directly from the newborn stars to fuel its transformation. In the hellish light of burning protostars, humanity's last ship prepared to show the galaxy what happened when a species with nothing left to lose decided that survival wasn't enough. They wanted justice, and they would remake themselves into gods of war to achieve it. The battle was far from over, and the true horror was only beginning. Vindictive's end had become something beyond classification: part ship, part organism, part monument to human ingenuity and alien hubris. As it consumed the wreckage of the fallen hegemony vessels, the bioship's true purpose finally revealed itself. It wasn't just a weapon of revenge. It was a seed pod, designed to spread across the galaxy and establish a new form of life that would ensure such genocide could never happen again. Admiral Kelter's flagship, the Dominion's Pride, hung motionless in space, her weapons exhausted and her crew facing the reality of their situation. They had managed to wound the monster, but in doing so, they had only made it angry. Around them, the stellar nursery pulsed with newborn stars, their light casting apocalyptic shadows as the bioship continued its transformation. "Captain Voss." Kelter's voice came across the communication channel, resigned but not defeated. "I want to understand. What did we do to deserve this level of hatred?" Voss's image appeared on his screen, but she was barely recognizable as human anymore. The bio-integration process had fundamentally altered her physiology, granting her capabilities that no single species should possess. Her eyes held the compound vision of crystal hunters, her skin showed the adaptive camouflage of Zephyran infiltrators, and her voice carried the harmonic complexity of Velthani philosophers. "You want to understand?" Voss asked, her bio-enhanced vocal cords producing sounds that bypassed the universal translator to speak directly to Kelter's nervous system. "Let me show you what understanding looks like." The Vindictive's end extended, neural interface tendrils toward the disabled flagship. But instead of destroying the ship, the bioship began sharing memories, not human memories, but the experiences of every alien species that had ever been consumed, analyzed, and integrated into its living databases. Kelter found himself experiencing the last moments of a Velthani colony world, seeing through the eyes of children as hegemony bombardment turned their cities to glass. He felt the desperate hunger of Crystal refugees as their agricultural worlds were stripped bare to feed the war machine. He experienced the cultural death of the Zephyran artistic communes as their philosophical works were systematically destroyed. To prevent seditious thinking, the hegemony's campaign wasn't just genocide, Voss explained as the Admiral writhed under the assault of alien memories. It was cultural annihilation on a scale that makes human warfare look like a playground. Dispute. You didn't just kill our people, you erased entire ways of thinking, entire forms of consciousness. The revelation was staggering. The hegemony hadn't simply been fighting humans, they had been conducting a systematic campaign to eliminate any species that might challenge their hegemonic worldview. Humanity had been only the latest target, but certainly not the first. And now, Voss continued, we've become the repository for everything you tried to destroy. Every extinct civilization, every dead culture, every silenced voice lives on within. This ship, we aren't just humanity's revenge, we're the revenge of every species you've ever eliminated. The Vindictive's end began to pulse with new energy patterns as the consciousness matrices of dozens of extinct species came online. The ship wasn't just alive, it was a symphony of different forms of intelligence, all united by the common experience of having been marked for extinction by the hegemony. Beginning final phase protocols, Dr. Sato announced, her voice now carrying the harmonic patterns of 17 different species. The Diaspora Protocol is ready for activation. Around the bioship, space itself began to ripple as organic mechanisms that defied known physics came online. These weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were reality manipulators, devices that could alter the fundamental constants of space-time within a localized area. What are you doing? Kelter demanded, though part of him already knew the answer. Creating a new universe, Voss replied simply. A pocket dimension where the extinct can be reborn, where the silenced can speak again, and where genocide becomes impossible because death itself has been redefined. The stellar nursery around them began to change as the Vindictive's end imposed its will on reality. Dead worlds materialized in space, their surfaces covered with cities that had been destroyed millennia ago. Ships that had been reduced to Atoms reformed themselves, crewed by the digital ghosts of their original inhabitants. "This is impossible," the Admiral whispered as he watched entire civilizations resurrect themselves from quantum memory. "You're thinking like a mortal," Voss explained, her form now flickering between human and something far more complex. "We've moved beyond the limitations of biology, physics, and death itself. The Vindictive's end was never meant to survive in your universe, it was meant to create a new one." The bioship had become a dimensional anchor, using the energy of newborn stars to power a transformation that turned the stellar nursery into humanity's ultimate monument. Here, in this pocket of altered space-time, every species that had ever fallen to the hegemony would live again, free to develop without the threat of extinction. But there was a price for this miracle, and Kelter was about to learn what it was. "You and your crew will be the witnesses," Voss informed him. "Modified to survive in our new reality, you'll carry the memory of what the hegemony's arrogance created. Every time you look at the worlds we've restored, every time you see the civilizations you thought you'd erased forever, you'll remember that this is what happens when you underestimate the power of the desperate." The Dominion's pride found itself surrounded by organic tendrils that didn't attack, but instead began a delicate transformation process. The ship's hull was reinforced with biomechanical components, its life support systems enhanced with alien biotechnology, and its crew was modified at the cellular level to survive in the new dimensional space. Kelter felt the changes taking place in his own body. His four eyes gained the ability to perceive quantum fluctuations. His nervous system was enhanced with biomechanical implants that would allow him to interface directly with the resurrected civilizations. And his memory was expanded to hold the complete history of every species the hegemony had destroyed. "This is your punishment," Voss explained as the transformation neared completion. "Not death, but understanding. You'll spend eternity watching the victims of your genocide rebuild their worlds, knowing that you could have chosen differently." The pocket dimension stabilized around them, revealing a cosmos filled with impossible beauty. Worlds that had been dead for thousands of years now pulsed with life. Species that had been extinct for millennia walked their rebuilt cities. The Velthani philosophical academies resumed their debates about the nature of consciousness. The crystal hive minds began composing new symphonies of collective thought. The Zephyrin artists started creating sculptures from crystallized time itself, and at the center of it all, the Vindictive's end had become something transcendent, a living nexus that connected every mind, every consciousness, every dream of every species that had ever faced extinction. It was no longer a ship, but a manifestation of evolution itself, a proof that life would always find a way to survive and adapt, no matter how complete the destruction seemed. The transformation was almost complete, but there was one final element that needed to be added to ensure the new reality's stability. The bioship began drawing energy from the original universe, using quantum entanglement to establish permanent connections with every world the hegemony controlled. Admiral Kelta realized with growing horror what was about to happen. "You're going to spread this across our entire territory." "Not spread," Voss corrected, her voice now the combined chorus of every extinct species speaking in perfect harmony. "In fact, every hegemony world will become a seed point for dimensional expansion. Your empire will be transformed into a memorial for everyone you've killed, and your people will become the caretakers of the civilizations they destroyed." The Vindictive's end pulsed once, sending quantum signals across the galaxy toward every world that bore the hegemony's flag. The transformation wouldn't be violent, it would be inevitable, unstoppable, and ultimately merciful. The aliens would be changed, enhanced, and given the opportunity to understand what they had done and work to repair the damage. But first, they would have to survive the judgment of the resurrected dead, who were already preparing to reclaim what had been stolen from them. 6 months after the Battle of the Stellar Nursery, the galaxy had been fundamentally transformed. The hegemony's vast empire still existed, but it now served a very different purpose. Every world that had once been a military staging ground was now a restoration center, where extinct species worked alongside their former executioners to rebuild what had been lost. Captain Erin Voss, though she was so much more than human, now that the title barely applied, stood in the observation deck of what had once been the Vindictive's end. The bioship had evolved into something that defied classification. Part vessel, part organism, part dimensional nexus, and part philosophical statement about the nature of existence itself. Through the quantum-enhanced viewports, she could see the fruits of humanity's ultimate victory. The pocket dimension had stabilized and expanded, encompassing 17 star systems where the resurrected civilizations had rebuilt their worlds according to their own vision of perfection. But more importantly, the infection had spread exactly as planned. "Status report from Hegemony Space," announced Lieutenant Ulloa, his own form now enhanced with biotechnology that allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds. "The dimensional rifts have established permanent connections with 43 core worlds. The transformation process is proceeding within acceptable parameters." The transformation hadn't been violent, as Voss had promised. Instead, it had been inevitable, a slow conversion that gave each world time to understand what was happening and why. The hegemony citizens woke up one day to find their skies filled with aurora-like phenomena that carried the memories and voices of the dead. Their oceans became repositories of alien consciousness. Their forests grew with trees that bore fruit containing the genetic patterns of extinct species. It was beautiful, terrifying, and absolutely irreversible. Admiral Keltor had become the reluctant ambassador between the old galaxy and the new reality. His enhanced physiology allowed him to serve as a living bridge between the resurrected civilizations and the surviving hegemony population. The role had changed him in ways that went beyond the biological modifications. He had gained something that the hegemony had systematically bred out of its citizens: empathy. The Velfani Philosophical Council has completed their analysis of hegemony military doctrine, he reported during one of his regular briefings with Voss. Their conclusion is that our species suffers from what they term existential insecurity, a pathological fear of being replaced that drove us to eliminate potential competitors before they could challenge our dominance. Voss nodded, unsurprised by the diagnosis. The bioship's enhanced analytical capabilities had reached the same conclusion months ago. What's their recommended treatment? Enforced cooperation with the species we attempted to eliminate. Kelta replied with something that might have been amusement. They're calling it therapeutic genocide prevention. Every hegemony world will be paired with a resurrected civilization. We'll work together to rebuild what was destroyed, and in the process, we'll learn to see other species as partners rather than threats. It was poetic justice on a scale that satisfied even humanity's enhanced sense of irony. The hegemony would survive, but only by becoming the opposite of what they had been. Their military would be disbanded and converted into restoration fleets. Their weapons would be recycled into terraforming equipment. Their entire culture would be rebuilt from the ground up under the guidance of the species they had tried to erase. And what about humanity? Kelter asked during one of their conversations. What becomes of your species now that you've achieved ultimate victory? Voss considered the question carefully. Around her, the bioship pulsed with the combined consciousness of billions of beings from dozens of species. She was connected to all of them, sharing their thoughts, their dreams, their memories, and their hopes for the future. In many ways, she was no longer strictly human. She had become something new, something that incorporated the best aspects of every civilization that had ever faced extinction. Humanity doesn't exist anymore, she said finally. We've become something else, guardians, maybe, or evolutionary catalysts. Our job is to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. The bioship had spawned 17 daughter Vessels, each one carrying a crew of enhanced humans and resurrected aliens to distant parts of the galaxy. Their mission was simple: find species that were at risk of extinction and help them develop the tools necessary to survive in a hostile universe. Sometimes that meant advanced technology. Sometimes it meant philosophical guidance. And sometimes it meant showing potential genocidal empires what had happened to the last civilization that had tried to eliminate an entire species, the Vindictives, and had become a legend that traveled faster than light itself. Stories spread through quantum communication networks about the ship that had turned defeat into victory, death into resurrection, and genocide into transformation. Some species saw it as a guardian angel. Others viewed it as a cosmic horror. But every civilization in the galaxy understood the same basic message: extinction was no longer permanent, and those who sought to impose it would face consequences beyond their worst nightmares. Dr. Sato, now serving as the bioship's chief consciousness coordinator, maintained the quantum storage matrices that held the uploaded minds of every human who had died during the Hegemony's campaign. They weren't gone, they were passengers on humanity's greatest journey, witnesses to the ultimate vindication of their sacrifice. "The children want to know when they can see Earth again," she reported during one of the regular consciousness briefings. Vos smiled at the question. Earth was being restored, along with every human colony that had been destroyed. But the new Earth would be different, enhanced, expanded, and shared with representatives from every species that humanity had helped preserve. It would be a monument to the power of cooperation and a reminder that survival didn't require the elimination of competitors. "Tell them soon," Vos replied. "But also tell them that home isn't a place anymore. Home is the knowledge that no one else will ever have to face what we faced." The bioship pulsed with agreement from thousands of consciousness, both human and alien. They had achieved something that no military force in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had made extinction extinct. The Hegemony's empire would survive, but as a force for restoration rather than destruction. The resurrected civilizations would rebuild their worlds, but with the knowledge and support of species they had never encountered before. And somewhere in the depths of space, 17 bioships continued their mission, carrying the message that the galaxy had learned from humanity's example. Those who sought to destroy others would themselves be transformed, and those who faced extinction would be given the tools to transcend it. The universe had been taught a lesson it would never forget, and humanity, in whatever form they now existed, would be there to ensure the lesson was remembered. In the end, they had achieved something greater than revenge. They had achieved evolution on a cosmic scale, and the galaxy was forever changed by the species that had refused to die quietly. The Vindictive's end had been humanity's last ship, but it had become the first vessel of something entirely new, a civilization dedicated not to conquest, but to ensuring that the light of consciousness would never be extinguished again. And in the stellar nursery where it all began, new stars continued to be born, each one a reminder that creation would always triumph over destruction, and that those who sought to eliminate life would only succeed in making it stronger, more resilient, and more beautiful than ever before.